front row. All right, so how are you all tonight? Thank you for coming. Okay. So my name is Kristen, and I'm one of the librarians here at Batavia Public Library. And tonight's program is sponsored by the Illinois Humanities Rhodes Scholars Bureau. Illinois Humanities is a statewide nonprofit organization that activates. After this event, please fill out the audience feedback survey, which helps Illinois Humanities produce future programs and seek support for funding the Rhodes Scholars. This program is part of One Book, One Batavia, an annual community-wide reading program presented by the library in cooperation with Batavia High School and co-sponsored by the Friends of the Batavia Public Library. This year's book is Ready Player One by Ernest Cline. Our next One Book, One Batavia program is the history of video games on Thursday, March 14th at 7 p.m. You can sign up for this and other great programs on our calendar at bataviapubliclibrary.org. And now I would like to welcome our presenter, Amy McMorrow Hunter. Amy is founder and president CEO of The Climate Economy, a nonprofit for education and experimentation on business models and lifestyles that are good for the climate, economy, and humanity. Welcome, Amy.
Thank you. Okay, can everybody hear me okay? That microphone's working? Okay. Thank you so much for having me, Kristen and Batavia Library, and I'm so excited to see all of you here tonight. Thank you for coming. There's a little mix-up. My name is actually Artemis. Who read the book? Okay, so yeah, I'm here tonight from the year 2045, which is when the book takes place, and so it's just after the end of the book, and we've beaten the evil IOI people, and so when we went and we got all of Halliday's stuff, we found an old DeLorean in actual working condition. So I actually decided to come back here tonight and present this to you. So what I'm going to do, I mean, obviously the future that is portrayed in Ready Player One is not an optimal future, right? So people live in shanty towns, basically stacks of like mobile homes. There's no good jobs, things like this. There's been an energy crisis. There's all kinds of climate problems. There's just tons of poverty. It's just really, really a really bad world. So I'm going to give you some information tonight so that you can avoid this future. And there's nothing untrue or like fantastical about the stuff I'm going to tell you. It's all happening already. It's all, it's technology we already have. It's things like that. So it's, although I am, from the future, my information is very current right now. Okay. Okay, so like I said, a lot of problems in 2045. Global civilization came at a huge cost. We moved up, so what happened is they used up all their fuel, and then fuel became really expensive, and people couldn't drive their cars anymore because they would run out of gas, and they just leave them on the side of the road because they just couldn't use them anymore. And another, also they found out that, of course, with burning fossil fuels, you put extra carbon dioxide into the air, which increases the temperature, and so it caused all kinds of crazy stuff. Screwed up the environment, polar ice caps are melting, sea levels are rising, weather's all messed up. Extinctions, plant and animal extinctions, people starving and homeless. There's just strange hybrids of shanty towns, squatter settlements, no good jobs. And this is one of my favorite parts, sorry I keep hitting that, but the rural areas are lawless badlands. So if you want to go from town to town, Like in the book, I think he goes from Oklahoma City to Columbus. He had to go in an armored bus with like 6 armed security guards manning like the top of the bus, because otherwise they would get attacked and I don't know what would happen to them. So we really want to avoid that type of situation. So this is what I was talking about with the temperature. So we know that carbon dioxide and temperature kind of go hand in hand. You can see, you know, as temperature's going up, carbon dioxide's going up, and as, you know, carbon dioxide's coming down over here, temperature's coming down, and so we know that they work together. And so we're over here now, and we haven't been this high since, millions of years ago. And it was 3 to 4 degrees Celsius warmer, and the sea levels were about 20 meters higher, so that's like 60 feet. So we really don't want that because something like a really high percentage of our cities are on the coasts. And so if this happens, I mean, those cities are going to be, all those people are going to have to move, right? And that's plus all kinds of other things that are just not good. We just want to avoid that. So that's what we'll be working on. So something Wade says in the story is, the worst thing about being a kid was that no one told me the truth about my situation. Well, I am going to tell you the truth. And the most important thing is you have everything you need to create a healthy and prosperous and happy world. All you have to do is decide to do it. It's really just a matter of willpower. So, this is the outline. We're gonna talk about how to cause the change that's required. And so first we understand the situation. That's part of the process. And so there's 3 steps, and I'm gonna take you through those 3 steps. But first I'm just gonna provide some background on, is everybody pretty familiar with climate change and this current status and things like that? Or, okay, a few people. All right. I know this is a crazy image, but it's got everything in it that you would ever need to know. So this blue and red temperature thing up there, it's a visual that scientists have made showing us that the temperature has gone from cold, 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 cold to now hot, 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 hot. And so basically, what we have to do is flip that around so we get those CO2 levels back down, and therefore the temperature's back down. So what we need to do, we need to reverse the global temperature by learning to live quality lives within planetary boundaries. And so we do this by having business models and lifestyles that are good for the climate, economy, and humanity. So it's like that triple bottom line. So we're not doing something just to make profit. Like if it harms the environment or harms people, you know, we're just not going to do it because there are better ways. We have better ways for all the things that we are doing that are causing the harm. So, so there's 3 steps. First, you got to understand your needs and impact. Second, you got to be a star in the climate economy. And third, you got to participate and share. And so we all have a role to play. We all have our own individual roles to play. And the climate economy, I think I have a slide about that actually. Oh, maybe not. So the climate economy, my nonprofit, is education, which, well, she told you, it's for helping people adopt new businesses and lifestyles, you know, so that we can transition into this healthier, less harmful way of doing business and living our lives. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to help you with is these first 2 here. It was a lot of things that happened to them. They say that it happened because they didn't know, they didn't have the information, nobody told them, you know. And a lot of that, I mean, of course we hear that all the time, you know, from our kids and stuff, and you know, I didn't know that, but so I'm going to tell you everything you need to know so you won't have to worry about it anymore. So basically, scientists tell us that the next 10 years are crucial. It says, in this report, it says in model pathways with no or limited overshoot of 1.5 degrees Celsius, that's kind of a main target that we're trying to not go over an increase in that much temperature change. CO2 emissions must decline by 45% by 2030, so that's almost half by 2030, that's 6 years, and reaching net zero around 2050. So the thing about carbon dioxide, it's when it's in the atmosphere, it's cumulative, so it keeps growing, you know, the amount of it. So we had when we had a normal climate and we had everything in balance and we had the normal amounts of carbon dioxide, now we keep adding to it and it doesn't go away. It just keeps adding. So we have to reduce that, you know, we're gonna have to reduce it a lot, but then it's gonna take a while for it to come down because there's already, you know, that amount that has accumulated up there. So there's a lot of, you know, science out there too that talks about just the different things that are more of a risk the more the temperature goes up. And it doesn't seem like a lot, but when we're talking about global temperatures, you know, usually the temperature changes that we've had normally take thousands to millions of years. And so with us, we've just made it happen in like 100 years, and the atmosphere just can't keep up. So this is actually what we have to do. So we have to learn how to live our lives without emitting carbon dioxide to the point where we can bring emissions down that kind of a scale, like basically straight down at this point, because we're already out here. So it's really it's a big challenge, and there's a lot of people working on it, and so we actually know how we're actually doing right now. So how does everybody think we're doing? Any ideas? Yeah, we're doing pretty bad. So this shows the current policies scenario up there in the right-hand corner. That's what it says, current policies scenario. So if all the governments of the world who have made a statement of how they will reduce emissions, if they all meet their targets, that's where we'll end up. So even the things that we've promised we'll do is not enough. So we need to be down here, optimally. And we're way up there. So we do know how to get these done. I mean, we have ways of doing it. It is possible. We still have the time to do it. We just have to decide to do it, like I said before. So this shows emissions, you know, how they've kind of decreased a little bit for the United States over time, and China has increased drastically. So China used to be, you know, have lower emissions than us by far, even though they have billions more people. But now they're above us for total emissions, but still per person, the United States is like, you know, the highest. So if everybody in China is going to be as bad as us, that's not possible. It's like literally not possible. So in regards to energy-related greenhouse gas emissions, I mean, you can see they're just kind of still going up. We are not getting that major downward slant that we have to have. So this is another study that just kind of gives you an idea, like there's a lot of targets that groups have set up to meet, and like the UN, to strategies to reduce emissions in certain industry sectors, and so things that they would, you know, try to do. And so they have an assessment of global progress towards the 2030 targets. So green, you know, right on track. One indicator out of 30, 40, no, 30 something. And 6 are in the right direction and off track. So kind of increasing a little bit, or getting better. Right direction, well off track. So like way too slow, like just way too slow. Wrong direction, need a U-turn, there's 6 of those. 24 of the right direction, well off track. And then some of them have insufficient data. So we can just see with some of these categorizations of actions that these industries, you know, have kind of pledged that they would take. We're just, the only green one here is this one, share of electric vehicles. And everything else is just, it's just behind schedule. And so it's just gonna be, you know, the longer we go in this direction, the harder it's gonna be when we are finally turning things around. So like food and agriculture, technological carbon removal, that's like taking carbon dioxide out of the air directly, or bioenergy, where you sequester the carbon and things like that. And then finance is like financing the things we need to be doing, you know, the clean energy and all that kind of stuff. And forests and land, you know, we just need to be leaving those forests alone for the most part and letting them grow, things like that. These are pretty obvious. So for power, I mean, that's the biggest one. That's probably the most important. But okay, so I don't know. Are you guys feeling any effects of that? Have you noticed anything? Anyone? What?
Prices are going up.
Well, this was like one of the warmest Februaries, I think, in
Yes.
history.
In recording history.
Yeah. And there's a lot of things happening, actually. So this is a study where they're looking at, so nature provides ecosystem services. It's like they provide, the nature provides like regulation of the climate, because it, you know, aspirates, it takes in carbon dioxide and gives out the oxygen and things like that. It regulates the climate, you know, with the weather and things like that, you know, soaking up the water so there's not floods, pollination, you know, all these things, all these services that nature provides are 14 out of 18 that were studied in this particular study are decreasing. So we are lowering nature's ability to provide those ecosystem services that we need to survive. So, you know, not great. We've got a lot of biodiversity problems happening because we're wiping out whole, you know, pristine ecosystems that have never been bothered before, and we're losing species of animals and plants, and it's just not going in the right direction. So there are some, you know, some pretty decent efforts to rectify this, but we'll talk about that later. So this is like the Sustainable Development Goals. Has everybody heard of those? So the UN put out these, I think 17 goals or something for improving, you know, so everybody would have a better life on Earth, basically. So, you know, eradicating poverty, hunger, good health and well-being, clean water and sanitation, sustainable cities and communities, climate action, and life below water and land. And we're also seeing we're going in the wrong direction for these things. So it's kind of unnerving. And climate change is what they call a threat multiplier. So when you hear about things and they say, oh, climate change, this and that is causing blah, blah, blah. Well, what they mean is climate change exacerbates other things, a lot of other things. You know what I mean? So they just kind of multiply the bad effects of it. They just make it harder to recover. Like, for example, social inequities. It just becomes a vicious circle. If you've got, you know, you're losing your home in a hurricane, and then, you know, you have to move and your family loses, you know, its job, and, you know, just all these things just kind of snowball. I mean, there's all kinds of studies globally and stuff. I mean, warmer temperatures increase violence in general, and especially violence against women, unfortunately. And a really, really crazy thing that's happening, and I don't know, has anybody ever heard how they'll bring up buses of refugees and drop them off, like they dropped off a busload in Chicago? Did anybody hear about that? So some of these refugees, this is like a family in Guatemala, deepening global climate crisis, drought, famine, they have to make this decision to stay and possibly die because there's no food, no jobs, or to make this insane trip, like through the jungle, drug-infested, drug lord-infested jungle, and coming to America having no idea what will happen to them, and that's what they're doing. A lot of people are choosing to do that because it's so bad where they are. Okay, so a couple years ago they did a climate assessment in Illinois, so they were really analyzing like how things are going to change. I mean, obviously agriculture is going to be impacted in a lot of different ways. You know, with floods and stuff, that's never good for agriculture. We could also be having, you know, more periods of droughts or, you know, a change of temperatures and things like that, like longer summers, shorter winters, things like that. They're saying it's going to be difficult to adapt, and that we're already experiencing some of the societal impacts, and that it's just going to get, you know, these impacts are expected to increase over time. Oop, wrong way. So this is a picture of the current kind of most suitable zone by temperature and precipitation. We can see it's kind of, Illinois is just right on the bottom edge of it there. So as the temperatures get warmer, this, you know, habitable, the optimal zone just kind of keeps going north. And so we're going to be right on the edge of that zone eventually. And so that's going to become like probably, you can imagine, people are going to be wanting to get into that space. So it's just hard to know all the effects that are going to come out of these changes. This is, you know, on a national basis, we're going to have all these changes, you know, that'll affect infrastructure, agriculture, forestry, transportation. In the cities, it's going to affect built infrastructure, quality of life, social inequality, and stressed ecosystems. So now we're going to do a couple scenarios. So it's something kind of that businesses do sometimes when they want to kind of envision the future, and then they tweak some variables, and then they have a different future that they look at, and so they're just trying to figure out what they should do to get to the future they want. And so if we're looking at business as usual, so this is not me talking, this is JP Morgan in a study a couple years ago. If we don't change the path of emissions, global temperature will rise, rainfall patterns will change, wildfires becoming more frequent, sea levels will rise, heat-related morbidity, oceans will become more acidic, storms and cyclones will become more frequent and more intense, and as these changes occur, life will become more difficult for humans and other species on the planet. And this is not only this one study. I mean, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change does periodic reports. It's hundreds of like scientists working together from all over the world, and they're saying, you know, the same. So one of the big things that we don't know, a big unknown with not taking action, is these tipping points. So for example, if the permafrost, which has been frozen for 1 million years, warms up, it's going to release things that haven't been in the air for 1 million years, and there could be viruses, you know, there could be bad stuff in there. It's causing the ocean temperature to change, and it's going to change the way the ocean currents go. That's a thing they're worried about right now. So these are really big things that once it happens, you probably can't get back from it, and it's just going to keep snowballing, you know, more and more as everything starts to add up. And of course, I mean, for younger generations, this is really increasing. Like you said, the prices are going up. It's going to go up for sure in the future if we're not, taking these steps so that we will not have to worry about that. And compound extremes is kind of like, with the tipping points, things just keep piling on and on. You have a flood, and then you have a landslide because, I don't know, you have a fire and all your trees are gone, and then you have a landslide, and then, so it's just, obviously more and more things happening like that is not good. And has anybody ever read The Parable of the Sower? Highly recommended. It's like a dystopian future book. But basically it says exactly what this report is saying, that the risks of all these really bad things happening just go up so much. And the impacts of the climate crisis could increase these divisions. So it's just, it could just get really, really unpleasant. So this is a picture from the movie Ready Player One. So this is the stacks. This is where most people live. And it's basically, you can see mobile homes like stacked up on top of each other. And this is like closer down on the ground. It's just nasty and dirty, and people are, selling stuff on the side of the road, and nobody has jobs. They live in, these tents and stuff, and they just, all day they're wearing their headgear so they can be in the oasis, which is online, and so they just escape, So it just is not pretty. Does anybody really want that? Anyone? Okay, good. So scenario 2, of course, we've got a good scenario. So there's something called climate resilient development, and it's basically, instead of taking the path toward fragmented climate actions, and instead we do all these transformative actions and try to make things more sustainable. So with ecosystem degradation, that's kind of the way we're going to go if we're not careful, and all these other kind of bad problems over here. And if we do take action, it's just going to be good in so many ways. We're going to have better health, better nature, just all kinds of good stuff. And so this is a picture of, like, I know you can't read it or anything, but like, so either we make these changes and go this way and have the good result, or we go that way and have the bad result. And there's a lot of middle ground too that we could end up in. And so if we do it, this is just one little study that's been done, but everybody says that the changes in industry and things to the new, like to clean energy and things like that, they're going to create millions of jobs and higher GDP, fewer deaths, better health from air, from air pollution and things like that. So, it's just, there's really not much of a downside. We just have to do it. We have to decide to do it. There's really no limit on the growth because energy from the sun is unlimited. We have enough to, in like 5 minutes or something to power the whole world for like a year. I don't know what it is. There's some saying like that, but it's just tons of it. And so it's just going to be a good deal as we move into the future and this global society and everything. We have to kind of learn to work together on these types of things. Oh, so this is what I was talking about in the climate economy. So if it's good for the climate, it's like reduce pollution, flourishing forests, biodiversity, stuff like that. So for the economy, we have new jobs, we lower inefficiencies, things like that. And with humanity, we want people to have purposeful work, a good living wage, family supporting, lifelong learning and health and stuff like that. Okay, so just to summarize that little area, so just try to keep up to date if you can. Now that you know all this, just try to keep up to date because it's going really fast. So we've kind of crossed out those top 2 things there. Okay, so now I'm just going to go through the 3 steps. So the first step here understand your needs and impact. So obviously, oh, and this is gonna look at like quality of life and stuff like that. So obviously your physical and mental health has to be your first priority, has to be everyone's first priority. I mean, if you are worried about getting food on the table for your family, you're not worried about the climate. You know, you're just not. And so we have to help people to get to the position where they can, you know, be healthy and safe and things like that. And so then we can all, you know, start to work on it. I mean, and as far as housing goes, I mean, housing nowadays is, you know, material heavy, lots of materials, not necessarily eco-friendly, they're not very energy efficient. We just have so many different ways we could be building and maintaining our houses, you know, for more passive energy, you know, LED lighting and stuff like that, renewable energy like solar panels and stuff like that. So there's just a lot of things we could be doing with housing. And I mean, we could even think about, I mean, a lot of people are living in tiny homes now. There's these dome homes, which I think look really super cool, and they're like really resistant to tornadoes and stuff like that. And this is like a home showing like how it's hooked up to the electric vehicle and stuff like that. And I mean, we can engineer or re-engineer like whole neighborhoods or villages. So we make it so an area is completely self-sufficient. So they make their own energy, their own food. You know, in the city it'd be like rooftop gardens sometimes, or just neighborhood gardens and stuff like that, and solar energy and things like that, and just kind of everybody getting more involved in the actual work of like making our food and you know, providing for people instead of like going to Walmart. And I mean, nothing against Walmart, jobs. I mean, there's just a lot of things we could do. We could think about prioritizing well-being over profit. I mean, you know, what do we actually need? You know, everybody just kind of has to figure out, do I really need that gas guzzler? Do I really need, you know, whatever it might be. But, you know, what do we really need to make us, you know, feel good? And we might be able to, you know, find some ways to do that. And we really want to find an alternative to the gross domestic product measure, because it's just about consumption. And consumption is one of the problems, right? Because it uses up materials, and and when you produce them, it uses energy, and then they end up in the garbage. So something, if you haven't done this yet, has anybody measured their carbon footprint? Anyone? Okay, so I did this, and I found out that my biggest source of carbon emissions in my life is my driving. I drive a lot. I drive like 3,000 miles a month. I live out in the country. And so I tried to figure out how I was gonna reduce that, and that's hard. You know, I mean, I can't just not drive, and I can't automatically get a new car, but I mean, it has been years now since I did that first study, and I've gone from like a Prius, and now I've got an EV, and so it just, you know, you just have to eventually decide, and then eventually, you know, you'll get to it. But if you don't know what's causing your emissions, then you don't know what to do, you know. And so I knew to do that. And if you go out there's all kinds of calculators you can use and stuff, and you can find out what in your life is kind of causing the most emissions. And believe me, it's not up to us individually to solve climate change, but it will help. I mean, we need changes on the individual, personal level, and also the systemic level, so in terms of our economic systems and things like that. So, because this, I mean, this is a little old, but so the United States has always had the highest carbon footprints. I don't know if this is per capita. Yeah, oh, it's per capita. So even though China has surpassed us in total emissions, we still have the highest emissions per person by a long shot. And so this is just something, my nonprofit, we work on this stuff like this to find new measures, ways of measuring things. So you can measure, your personal health and then your contributions to your neighborhood, to the common good, things like that, and then just connecting with people and helping other people to connect, because a lot of people just kind of get left in the lurch, and they feel helpless and alone, and we just don't want that. So this is kind of the easy step you could do next if you haven't done it before. Try to find a carbon footprint, and I've got a website. I can, we can send it to you or whatever, but it's got all these tools on there, and it also can keep you up to date and all that kind of stuff. So there's also checklists available, so you can go through and it'll be like, how to make your home more energy efficient, because the first thing there is energy efficiency. You gotta reduce your energy use, and then you get solar or whatever like that. So it's just there's steps normally you have to take, and it's going to take a while. Some things are easier. They're little, like not buying plastic water bottles, using like a cup. I mean, that's like one of the simplest things we can all do. As I stand here with a plastic cup, I do have a regular cup, but I didn't bring it. Okay, so we've gotten through another one of those things, those bad things in the future. So now we're going to talk about how to be a star in the climate economy. Okay, this is where it starts to get really fun. So all kinds of jobs are available in this new climate economy. And basically, we need to transition most of our jobs and the way that we do things to be less impactful on the environment. And so kind of everybody and every job is going to need to change in some way. And I know that sounds crazy, but I mean, if you think about it, it kind of makes sense. I mean, if we know better ways to do things, why wouldn't we, So, so this is all about like trying things out, finding, like what are you interested in? What are your passions? What do you find yourself, doing? And then, kind of learn more about it and find out how you can apply your passions to some sort of a neighborhood project or something. So in this terrible future of mine, the best job you can get is to be an indentured servant for IOI, which is the big internet company that owns everybody, owns their debt, and so they have to go and work off their debt, and then they accrue interest, and then they can never get away. But some people are okay with that because that means they're not going to starve in this world. And so we want to have better jobs available in that, right? Yeah. Okay, so this is another thing my nonprofit has been working on. So, in business they have business model canvas. Is everybody familiar with that? It's like a tool that businesses use to kind of map out like who's their competition, what's their product, how are they going to make money, all these different, what are their resources, all these different things. But so what we're doing in the climate economy is we're not trying to sell a product or service. We're trying to change behavior. So we find, we think about this future we want, and we think, okay, well then people are going to have to do this. And so then we come up with an action that we want them to take. And then we think, okay, but what are they doing now? So then we go back over here to over here. And we see that it's the problem action. And so over here, all these problem actions over here, they're closing the funnel of like the availability of our resources and things like that. We're running out of stuff, and all these things are happening. So we have to, that's just going to keep going that way unless we change things, obviously. And so to get, from our problem action over here to the target action, you need to help people change behavior. And so you figure out, like, okay, obviously you want probably a pretty big group to do it, and then you think, okay, how am I going to motivate them? Like give them incentives. And then you gotta make it easy for them to do it, right? People don't have to go out of their way, it's just right there. And then you have to, always remind people. And then you always wanna start with like a small group that kind of starts the ball rolling. So basically what we wanna do is get from this end over here where all these problem actions are happening over to here where we're gonna have, that funnel's gonna open back up and we're gonna be able to sustain the environment and have more healthy people. So this is just kind of an example like what I was talking about. When we have a problem action, we think, what is causing the problem action? Everything has a cause, right? Everything that you do, you did because something happened before it, and it just keeps going back, back, back. So a lot of the things that are problems today are because of like things that happened a long time ago, like with oil and gas companies getting really preferential laws or something. I'm just, throwing it out there, but that is still, happening. And so if you're going to try to change something like that, then you're going to go about it a little bit differently than you would if you're just trying to get, your kids to, recycle or something. So it's really, it can be as big or as small as it needs to be. It can be on a really small basis, or it can be on a really, really large basis to try to get, these changes done so that people are changing their behavior. Okay, so the big industries in the climate economy, at least down where I am in Southern Illinois, and in general also. So first, energy and electrification, circular climate solutions, we'll talk about what that is, and natural climate solutions. So first, energy and electrification. So electrification means things that we now do with fossil fuels, we switch it over to electricity somehow. So like we get instead of having a gas-powered mower, we have an electrical mower, or instead of a gas-powered vehicle, stuff like that. So, and you can electrify everything, basically. Okay, so my husband's a logger, and he has diesel sawmill machines. And so I'm like, can you electrify that? And he's like, no. But I bet he could figure it out. But so basically we change our system of energy to work off electricity instead of fossil fuels. And so the problem action is, this is just like a scenario we'll run through to show you how it works. So we know that people are not using any of these things. And there's a lot of reasons for that. I don't want to have to go out and buy all these things, and who's got time to plan all that and worry about it, and it's just tough, So what is causing people to do this problem action? There's all kinds of reasons. And so we have to, if we're going to try to fix that, this is like this one group, they're trying to, this is their target. So business as usual, they'd only sell, like half as much as they would if we wanted to get to the point where we're getting the concentration of these new technologies that we need. Other things related to energy, there's all kinds of new jobs related to the grid and like optimizing the grid. Business models related to electricity, sharing electricity. It's a distributed system instead of like right now we have these big power plants and they power all the little houses and stuff. But with renewable energy, each little individual thing can have its own energy if they want, and then they can tie into the grid. And then, so the grid is more reliable, or more like safer, like it won't, if it goes down in one place, that doesn't mean the whole plant goes down, it's just that one house or whatever. But so there's a lot of new jobs related to that kind of thing. There's also all this, so this is called an urban community energy economic development systems model. That's a big, long thing, but it's, so basically we take all our waste, mostly organic waste, we can digest it, and use the methane to produce heat or to use as biofuels. You can, instead of throwing away your food scraps, you compost those, you add them back into the soil. That's just crucial. I mean, our soil right now is, struggling. And then of course you have renewable and wind. And so there's not just one solution. And there's not just one solution for any one person. It's like everybody's gonna have their own, situation for how this works. And so each city will have a plan, have to have a plan. And actually Batavia has a draft plan, and up until the 28th of February, you could get online and look at the draft. I don't know if you can still do that, but I encourage, everyone to do that if you can, because, Batavia and Kane County are really kind of moving forward on that stuff in a good way. So that's good news for you guys. So these are some of the example jobs. You probably can't read that, but it's like salvage and remediation, tire recovery, environmental cleanup, green farming, hydroponics, aquaculture, permaculture, landscaping, soils, composting, nursery production, energy efficiency, green energy production. These are going to be the big job areas. These are the things we need people doing, instead of selling stuff that we don't need. I keep going back to Walmart. I mean, I hate to do that. I don't want to, vilify Walmart or anything. I mean, maybe I do, but it's just this whole societal thing where we consume and then we throw it away, and instead we're gonna, we can change it so that we're not creating as much waste and consuming as much stuff. Okay, so that's electrification and energy. Now we're going to talk about the circular economy. So the circular economy can account for a huge chunk of emission reduction. So basically what this means is, so we have a linear economy. It's, you build it, you use it, and then you throw it away. And okay, so recycling, there's, that's good because you reuse stuff. But with the circular economy, you're designing out waste from the beginning. So if you want to be able to recycle something like this, you don't put 5 different kinds of plastic in that have to be separated from each other before it can be used again, things like that. And so you look at all the processes and you try to design out the waste from the beginning and figure out how to reuse everything that is waste or things like that. And so this is just a picture of that on like a bio scale, like in terms of bioproducts and biomass processing. I mean, there's a whole new slew of industries and services needed and expertise and things like that. So it's just a lot of the stuff that will be coming is just, it's pretty exciting, I mean, it's cool and it's fun. And like, so here's an example, fashion and the climate economy. So reducing waste. Basically every one of these numbered things is like a target action that we want people to do. But then when you put them all together, then you're enabling that piece of clothing, instead of going in the dumpster, it, goes to a vintage shop, or it's turned into something else, things like that. Because clothing, there's some crazy statistic, and I don't remember it exactly, but it's something like 5 garbage truck fulls of clothing is thrown away like every second or it's some crazy amount. It's just way out of line. So things like that, we can just do so much better. We just need to not be doing it the way we're doing now. And like with food, there's a lot of ways we can do things differently so that we are we're putting good nutrients back into the soil. We're having all the systems working together instead of just having like a monoculture that is filled with pesticides and killing the soil. And there's just better ways of doing it. And so this is another like big area. of what will be happening, and eating more nutritious food as well, you know. So natural climate solutions, this is another like subset of solutions. So what this is basically, this could provide 37% of cost-effective CO2 mitigation needed by 2030. That's a ton, right? That's huge. So we're talking about reforestation, cover crops, making biochar. Has anyone ever heard about biochar? We'll talk about that a little bit more later. But, improved manure management, grazing optimization, grassland and wetland restoration, things like that. And in fact, the restoration and conservation economy, as it already is huge. So this one won't be such a stretch, you know, because we already do a lot of it. Like I think we're trying to get something in the state going where it's called 30 by 30, where you have 30% of our state's lands protected by 2030 or something like that. You know, so we're not building on that land. We're letting it grow, and we're letting it be a forest and things like that. So an example of a problem action here, people taking care of their lawns. I mean, there's a lot of weird things about this, like with house, what are they called? When you have a little organization that is like the overlord of the neighborhood that tells you what you have to do. HOA, yeah. So a lot of people just are like, we can't do that, we're not allowed. We have to grow our grass, and they won't let us put in anything else. You know, and it's like, so that's something, you know, that people can like do. Like, okay, they're saying you can't do it, but you can figure out a way, you know, to change that. I mean, it's hard, you know, like you have to convince people and spend a lot of time and stuff like that, but it's worth it, you know. So an example of a thing people can switch to is xeriscaping. Has anyone ever heard of xeriscaping? So it happens in like really arid, you know, places like Arizona and stuff like that. So it's low maintenance, low cost. It's fine in the shade. It uses less water, less pesticides and stuff like that. Provides natural beauty, and it uses native plants and trees. So we're just rebuilding our ecosystem, yard by yard. Like those ecosystem services that I was talking about earlier, you know, everybody has that in their yard. They're contributing to that. That'd be great. So other things like related to natural climate solutions are ecotourism. So ecotourism is like a twist on traditional tourism where, you know, you're going to learn about the culture, and you're gonna, sometimes they have like college spring break. You go to the forest, and they have you do a bunch of projects that they need help with, you know, taking care of the trails or whatever, stuff like that. And there's also like adventure ecotourism, like, you know, zip lines and, you know, all that kind of stuff. So this is probably gonna be, you know, a pretty big thing. I mean, down where I live, we actually have a wetland with like cypress trees, and I just went there with my kids, and it's just like, it's amazing, you know? It's just, there's cool stuff out there, and it's got neat stories, you know, with the Native Americans and stuff like that. So, okay, so biochar, this is where it's kind of like charcoal, but you cook it in a different way, and so it's a little bit different. But you can put it in soil, and it's got this crystalline structure, and so it can hold water, it can hold nutrients. You can add like compost and stuff to it, and it's really good for the soil. And it's also like carbon sequestration, because you're just putting that carbon back into the soil, and it's going to stay there. I mean, whole industries to transform. I can't remember. Oh, it's Uber. This is like the future that Uber wants. And I think this would be great as long as these are all electrical airplanes. So, you know, just kind of start to look around, you know, at the jobs and stuff that people are doing, and think about how they're going to have to change. A lot of times it's really fun to do personality tests and just, you know, kind of some of those tests that like help you figure out what you're interested in and stuff like that, and which direction you could potentially go. So, okay, we've covered almost everything. just got a few more minutes here. So step 3, we're going to talk about, it's participate and share, right? So first of all, we want the urban areas to be connected to the rural areas. So I lived in a rural area, and we can do all these things for the urban areas. So we can take your waste, and we have more space. We can, make the compost, make the biochar. We can grow the industrial hemp that we can make everything with, just like you can make everything with oil. You can make it all with industrial hemp. These are the things that need to be happening in the rural areas, not wasted badlands or whatever it was, but these really important things that are going to complement what's going on in the cities. We're not going to be able to get everything we need, by just, having the cities do it by themselves or whatever. So it's really just a different way of thinking about things. But basically, for this step, you always want to have a team. Like, in Harry Potter, he's got, Hermione and Ron and, all kinds of different movies. You have a team, and a lot of people, they find a really good team and then they can get stuff done. And it's fun, So it's just, a good thing to do. And also you can contribute your particular expertise to that team, So you'll have different people in your team that are, good at different things or whatever like that. So my nonprofit has built this platform, which is trying to make all this happen. So we have education courses, stuff like that. And then we have ways to do experimentation. We have idea boards, contests, project management stuff. And so basically what we're just trying to do is to cultivate that knowledge, increase participation, of everybody in the community, and to spread effective strategies for beneficial and networked climate resilient development. So for this one, a really good step to take is to think about your favorite nonprofit and ask them what they're doing. They're probably doing something. There's a lot of stuff going on in Illinois with clean energy laws and stuff like that, and the 30 by 30 thing I was talking about, and all kinds of other things. So, that's your first thing, or talk to your friends, things like that. So, okay, I've given you all the information that you need to avoid the horrible future that we have in 2045. And this is just a summary, so you understand your needs and impact, be a star in the climate economy, and participate and share. And then you can avoid our future, my future's catastrophe. So does anybody have any questions?
What are 3 things that all of us can do right now to start making a change?
Right,
Aside
so
from, like the water bottle.
there's a million little things like that, but I think these 3 steps right here are the most important. Like, you need to do the carbon footprint calculator, let's say, and figure out what's your biggest source of carbon emissions and waste and things like that. And look at how you can reduce waste in your household. Maybe you're buying things with less packaging, and you're looking at the source of your products. Did they come from a million miles away? Did they come from local people? Things like that. There's just a lot of little habits around your house that when you do that initial analysis, you'll be able to identify, the best things that you will be able to do, because it's going to be different for you than me. I drive all the time, and maybe you don't. So, and then also just to, just start to find out what is going on in this area, and what you are interested in, how you could contribute, because we don't want to get stuck in these terrible jobs where we're, an indentured servant and, all that kind of stuff. We want to do stuff that we love. We want to live our purpose and earn a living, a good living, and we can do that by nurturing human nature, or nature and human well-being. So there's just a lot of ways, and I've shown you some here today. And then the thing about reaching out to your favorite nonprofit and just getting involved with whatever it is that they're doing already. Because, like I said, most of them are doing something, or if they're not, you could see what they can do. I mean, there's a million things that we can do, you know, to help all of this stuff happen. Does that help?
You know, now I totally believe all this stuff. I'm not a climate denier. Climate's been changing for millions of years. But my problem lies with charging ahead a little bit too fast by legislation in that. You, like on the business channels even, people, they've come out and they've said, for all these electrical devices, electrical vehicles and everything else, we'll need more copper in the next 10 years than has been mined in all the history of mankind. And and there's copper companies opening up down from Colombia to western United States. And you have to look at what it takes to separate the copper mineral from the copper ore. It takes dilute sulfuric acid. Some of that's going to get in the environment. Butte, Montana, they shut down the Anaconda Copper Company back in 1992, the preservationists. They didn't call them environmentalists then, preservationists. And they're still fighting pools of water with sulfuric acid and things like arsenic, the other things that they use to separate these chemicals.
Yeah, there's.
Now they are using some of those poisons to develop cancer treatments, but you can't have cancer treatments all over the country.
Do you know how much arsenic is in a coal ash pond?
Pardon?
That are all over
Yeah.
coal ash ponds?
So I just
There's already these problems with our existing forms of energy, and that's why
This is copper. This
we're
is not
trying
gold.
to move in a different way, and we will have to use a lot of materials, you know, and that's why it's so important to like figure out a way to design things so that they're recyclable
I would
and
agree with
reusable and things like that, and also to be sourced responsibly. So we're not going into, you know.
And even the Chinese shut down with their cadmium, with the NiCad batteries, cadmium mines in South Africa for a few weeks because, and they're real up there with human rights stuff. Because they were raising dust with an oxide of sulfur in it. And they had this up in the atmosphere to have sulfuric acid rain then.
Right.
And I mean, so you gotta go, I think
Well,
slow
that's the
down.
thing. I mean,
You
so-
can't-
I'm all about education and experimentation.
Mhm.
So learning about it, trying something out, and then you got to tweak it and make it better. Because if you are causing harms like that, you got to design that out
Yeah,
somehow.
yeah.
You know, so it is really kind of a challenge. It's not just like an easy solution. You know, it's all kinds of big.
I'm not arguing
Changes.
against any of this stuff, you should do it.
But
Okay.
you're right. I mean,
I think Elon Musk is doing a great thing. Get off planet, mine up there.
yeah. I
Who
mean,
cares?
you're absolutely right, though. We have to make sure that we don't make the same mistakes, you know, that we made in the past.
And also, there was a few weeks ago, one of the blurbs on the internet was, the scientists can't explain the warming of the oceans over there. It wasn't just permafrost. They can explain it down to about 1,300 meters, but below that, they can't tell. This might be the normal thing. This might be the Earth, you know, this Mid-Atlantic Ridge or the Pacific Ring of Fire. You know, the tectonic plates where the molten rock comes out.
Well, there is,
No.
you know, there are certain flows in the atmosphere. You know, you've probably heard of like atmospheric rivers, and they've always been, you know, pretty steady because our climate's always been pretty much the same. And so, you know, every area kind of has its usual, you know, spring, summer, fall,
Yeah.
winter, whatever. And it's the same thing in the ocean. So there's currents, you know, when the ice melts and it comes down and it's warm. So like I was just looking at Iceland, and
They got a hot spot there, yeah.
it's cold there. They never it's like 55 at the warmest, you know. And I was trying to, you know, see if it would be a good place to go, you know, with climate change. And so, but what's going to happen there is it might get colder because of the ocean currents. And instead of the sea coming up, it might go down. So it's just like, you don't know what's going to happen.
But I said hot spot there because that's where plates come together and there's volcanic action that comes out. And that's why I said hot spot like Yellowstone. There's a Yellowstone in Iceland, something like that.
Yep.
But, what was the, one of the other things that, go ahead, you explain it.
Anyone? Anything I can explain? Anything you've been wondering about with this stuff?
Oh, yeah, I was gonna say, what, the oceans, though, that's the hydrosphere, that's the biggest heat sink on this planet. Rocks loose like that,
Well-
and atmospheres shift over the planet. They can pick up heat or lose heat, but they will shift.
Well, it's the same with the carbon dioxide in the air.
Yeah. well,
We know it's out of
it
balance,
should.
and the ocean is soaking up more of it, and more of it, and more of it, and it's becoming more acidic. And that, like, it kills, like, the stuff on the top,
Mhm.
and that the bottom feeders need to eat, and so the bottom feeders die. And it's wiping out whole ecosystems because, and it also, like, with the shellfish, it like, they can't grow their shells because it's so acidic and things like that. So there's a lot of really big effects happening.
I'm not
all
even
over the
against
place.
progress, just say, watch what you're doing.
Absolutely, I agree.
Okay.
Come on, no hard questions, come on. Yeah,
The program so far has kind of given us a lot of insight in terms of the need for individual change. But to really address some of these questions, it's a much bigger issue where there's systemic change that needs to occur on a large scale
true.
in a relatively short period of time. And I'm just looking for something more in terms of, are there things we should be doing in our communities other than the individual steps? Are there
Yeah,
things
I
that we
mean-
should be pushing for or
You can,
lobbying for, that kind of thing?
yeah, you can go to your business and find out what you can do. Ameren provides like free energy efficiency things where they can, and then they'll give you stuff, they'll pay for it to do the updates, like to your home and your business. Of course, you want to get involved in like legislation. There's a lot of, policy is crucial to this, you know, because, I mean, policy is really the signal, you know, that the market needs to really go all in on all this stuff. And so, like in Illinois, we're way ahead of the curve. We passed the Climate and Equitable Jobs Act a couple of years ago. And so we're trying to roll out all these new clean energy jobs and stuff in like an equitable way, you know. And so there's a lot of good things happening in Illinois, like at the government level, and also at the federal level right now, there's all kinds of grants and money out there for all different kinds of stuff. USDA, the Department of Agriculture, you know, for all kinds of different, you know, commodities and different stuff like that. So, and like I said, Batavia has like a plan. Like it's King County's, you know, plan, but Batavia is part of it. And so, I mean, all these things are out there and you can find out, you know, what interests you and then start to get involved in those things. There's things everywhere you look, if you know what to look for, you know.
You know, like up in Montana, I lived out there for 5 years, they got some huge wind farms out there. Lots of, 20, 30 windmills on each side of the road.
Mhm. Well, and like, I think it was Puerto Rico when they had that big storm down there a few years ago. Everything, was wiped out, and then you see the windmills in the background, like, still turning, But it's definitely got to be individual and systemic. And so that's why, you think about things in your own household, but you also think about things in your community, in your business, in your government, things that you are connected to. And then also just learning about the bigger issues. I mean, because obviously this is a global issue. The people who are suffering the worst from like the temperature increases and things like that are the poorest people, and so it's really kind of a moral issue too. It's like these people are suffering because of these changes, and it's not really fair because they're living these lives, they're farmers, or they're, they just have really low impact. But so there's just so many things you can do. If your church, I know the Catholic Church has a bunch of climate stuff they do. Just every organization you're attached to, if they're not doing something, just see if you can start something.
You see those windmills take a lot of, the materials they use too are, they're mined or they're either mined or they're chemically put together.
Well, that's, like solar panels and windmill blades
Those blades are like
Need to
a
be
trailer truck long.
recyclable, and they're working on that.
I don't even recycle, I think it's like an 80-foot trailer with those things.
Oh, I know, they're so cool.
For one blade.
Uh-huh. Does that make sense? with the systemic stuff, I mean, obviously it's hard to think about the systemic stuff because it's so big. We can't do, we can't go and change something global, that has this huge impact. I mean, we have to do what we can from where we are. What is it? Think global, act local. That old saying. It still applies. But you still need to think global because it is a global issue. But you can really make the biggest impact by looking locally. Just look around in your life. Things that are happening to you, things that you need to do and stuff like that. And just be more mindful. Thank you so much, everyone. Appreciate it. If anybody has any questions, I'll still be around for a while.
So thank you for coming. Okay,
We can hear you.
I'll just shout.
Kristen on the button.
Okay, so thank you for coming. There is a survey in the bag that I would really appreciate you filling out. We had Amy come here by means of a grant, and one of the conditions of the grant is that we submit the survey. So if you could just take a moment to fill that out. It doesn't take much. You don't have to identify yourself on there, and just turn that in. And thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate it.